Hey everyone, it's our season finale. And before we jump in, I wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you to every guest who trusted us with their story this season, to our brand partners who support what we do, and to all of you who keep listening, sharing, and reaching out. This show exists because of you. While season 12 of Beyond the Plate and Beyond the Drink is wrapping up, we're not really going anywhere. We'll continue to release our audio newsletter, Heard, every other Monday right here on the Beyond the Plate feed. So make sure you're subscribed on your podcast player and follow along on social at BT Plate Podcast and at On Cappy's Plate. And as I say season after season, Beyond the Plate would not be Beyond the Plate without the incredible team I'm lucky to work alongside. So a huge thank you to the best in the biz, Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, Sean Petrosian, and Sarah McClellan-Me. All right, let's do this. Got a very long intro given his 40 plus years cooking and 25 plus years on TV, so bear with me. He is a chef, cookbook author, father, and philanthropist. Well, not really that long of an intro since everyone knows who he is. Hey everyone, I'm Cappy and welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their communities. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you've listened before, we're glad you're back. If you're just tuning in, don't miss Heard, our short audio newsletter that comes out every other Monday right here on Beyond the Plate. I'm sharing what's on my plate, from culinary insights to restaurants and recipes, all in just a few minutes. Please enjoy this episode as we go Beyond the Plate with Jamie Oliver. What is up, sir?
How's it going, man? Everything all right?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for being here. All right, in some ways, that intro can be for someone in their 70s or 80s, but you've had this long, illustrious career. You just turned 50, and it seems you're doing some of your most important work. Since we're talking about age, does hearing the number 50 bother you at all, or are you embracing it?
I think it surprises me. The thing about The Naked Chef is it was always about a young guy running around town, having fun. And that's what kind of made me famous, I guess. And I was always known for that. So to say that you're 50 years old definitely doesn't feel like the same person. But of course it is. And that's life. And none of us are getting younger. I'm loving it. I'm really liking it. I think I'm already enjoying it more than my 40s. It's a really good excuse to, I think, go into a new gear and find different things, different hobbies, different purposes, question lots of things, be grateful. And at the same time, it's not just me getting older, but my kids are getting older. My eldest is 23 and my youngest is 9. So 5 kids keeps me busy. So, I'm kind of grown into my role finally. And I guess in some respects, I've been doing the sort of the TV and everything that goes with it and the cooking for a long time now. So it's given me, I've grown into my role in some respects.
So tell everybody listening, who is Jamie Oliver?
He's a 50-year-old fella from Essex. I grew up in a little village in Essex, which is kind of like about an hour from London, very rural. And I grew up in a pub restaurant. My dad was a chef. My mum was a great cook. We grew up in the pub. And I guess growing up in a family business makes you sort of have to multitask and get stuck in and multitask. And in some respects, I've never really stopped doing all of those things. But, that's kind of where I come from. And I guess as a person, well, the person's changing, I guess. It's been a journey. Obviously, I'm very different now than I was from the 18-year-old or 16-year-old that left school with no qualifications. It's been an amazing journey, and I think I've remained curious and open-minded and tried to learn as many things as possible. Who am I as a person I might be the wrong person to ask. My wife would probably tell you.
What would she say?
Obsessed with food, which is unsurprising. I think she thinks that I'm a little on the strange side. I kind of spend a lot of my nights sort of reading and researching sort of random things. I'm a random collector of information.
Mostly food or like a lot of other
food,
things?
Agriculture, and anything sort of people, populations. I just find it all very fascinating. And of course, the world that I live in, where I work in so many different countries, we broadcast in about 120 countries around the world. So I've been lucky to travel to at least half of them over the last 25 years.
Crazy. When did you become interested in food? How old were you?
Well, it's all I knew, really. I started cooking for fun about 8, and and I started cooking for pocket money in my mum and dad's restaurant pub when I was about 10. And, I used to just do Sundays for 3 hours when I was really little. And then pretty quickly I'd do like basically double, like split like 5 hours in the morning, 5 hours in the night. And that would be my pocket money. I did that pretty early, but probably early than, probably illegal, to be honest. I don't think it was legal, but it meant that I got quite comfortable with the kitchen quite young, and it became sort of like very familiar and somewhere I was comfortable. And yeah, that's, I guess, what shaped the way I cook and how I approach food and designing food and writing recipes and all of those things.
Can you paint a picture of little Jamie? Like, what kind of kid were you?
I think I was like quite polite, sort of quite a nice kid, but I was just a good quality raving idiot, really. I was just like up trees, up buildings, up the river.
Curious and a different...
Yeah, not really frightened of much, just having a laugh, but very much out in the countryside and having a laugh. And it was minus the underworld. It was pretty much like an English version of Stranger Things. Bunch of dudes on BMXs, CBs, walkie-talkies, parents with perms and great music. But yeah, we like grew up in a village, so there was probably like 15 of us that were always hanging out, and there'd be minimum sort of 6 or 7 at a time. So it was fun. It was really fun. But like, I guess living in a pub was very unusual to all my friends and completely normal to me. When I walked into my house, like I had to go through a commercial kitchen first.
Literally.
Yeah, and it was a robust kitchen. Like even because they were doing proper cooking in the pub, like it was on the busy nights, there'd be like 6, 7 chefs on the shift, and that you'd have like, starter, main course section, veg section, sauce, the pass, a pastry section. So it wasn't just like most pubs, which was like a local lady and a deep fryer and a freezer. It was like, it was set up as a proper French, regimental kitchen.
That's wild. You've spoken openly about dyslexia. How did that shape you?
I didn't really know about it until way later. I think dyslexia wasn't really recognized. I don't even think I even heard it said until I'd left school, really. They didn't understand it. They didn't really recognize it. You were just either stupid or clever. I was in the sort of bottom groups for stuff and struggled a lot with the reading and the writing. And that was it, really. I mean, I think a lot of kids it's common for kids that are dyslexic or neurodiverse in some way, shape or form to be bullied and get bullied. It's really quite common. For me, that wasn't the case. But I still the school was still very unflexible about learning, not getting any extra time in exams, or it was early days, really. And obviously I've seen my kids now, they live in a very different world as far as recognition and understanding and slightly more individualized learning. But the truth is the classrooms are still not particularly inclusive. There's probably about 20% of the class struggling to fit into sort of what you would perceive as the normal protocol of what you should be doing to be considered clever. Having done documentaries about it since, and having met professors and scientists of the brain and that specialize in those areas, you start to realize that it's not a disablement, it's just a difference. And actually everyone's different. And even the 70% of kids that find school quite normal and they, and can toe the line, they're also really diverse in the way they learn. They happen to fall into the protocol and not be sort of pulled out or struggle like us. I guess what I'm trying to say is education is a long, long way from being optimized to allow every child to sort of thrive as quickly as they could or should, or be supported as much as they could or should. So in some respects, like in the world of AI and science and data and all of that stuff, the good news is there's probably lots to change and lots to be learned as far as how the next generation of kids are going to be taught and made to feel and supported. And having had 5 kids and being pretty engaged in all things kids, the education system in the US and the UK is it's a system, and it's man-made, and it's not gravity, it's not genetic, it's not from the gods. It's a long way from perfect. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate teachers or anything like that. I think teachers are amazing, really amazing. They need to be trained more diversely and loved more and paid more and incentivized better. And like I keep saying, there's probably a lot more that we can gain from our next generation. Because ultimately the country's job is to spit out a load of 16-year-old kids that are going to go and thrive in what you call the workplace or out there in the big wide world. Be productive. And at the same time, you want them to be happy and have good mental health, right? So you can only really achieve that if you help every kid find a place of acceptance and happiness about themselves and then amplify the best version of themselves and get that balance between what they're naturally good at and also that little carrot of pulling and stretching and uncomfortable, like growth is definitely through being uncomfortable. So I feel kind of cool about that. We did this documentary just last year and it went massive and actually ended up changing the law in the UK about how teachers were trained.
That's amazing. That's great. Thank you for sharing all that. That's incredible knowledge, incredible work, and I'm sure that's going to really make a difference for someone listening or many people.
The someone listening could be a parent, they could be someone young or old, but I think sort of slightly strangely in our cultures, it's understanding neurodiversity for better and for worse, but most importantly, understanding it logically and scientifically, biologically. We haven't really been in that place, and there's a lot of people that are masking, pretending, and suffering, and also struggling and embarrassed. Do you know what I mean? And in some respects, it's really not that deep. I feel like there's a good energy in the US and the UK where people are starting to just fess up about stuff. And although some people might complain about it, oh, everyone's neurodiverse these days. When I was a kid, they weren't. And it's like, yeah, well, when they were kids, they were probably the kids getting the cane. I went to primary school when kids got the slipper for being naughty. You know what I mean? They were probably all neurodiverse. It's good. It's good that we're talking. And now parents can get online and research and get the latest research, not something that's in a book that's 5 years old and way out of date. And when it's your precious little kid, absolutely there's parents that are really worried about their kids for any of those kinds of challenges, right? It keeps them up at night. So I think when you foster a kind of environment where it's very normal to discuss and talk and appreciate that actually everyone's different, 100% of people are very, very different, I think we'll be in a much happier place. It's hard for kids, but I think it's really hard for parents as well. I think it's much harder for parents to sort of sit back and watch if you've got an unhappy kid that's struggling and sort of going around in circles.
Okay, so back at home, when you were a kid, were family dinners a thing or were mom and dad at the pub? Yeah?
They were a thing because we worked in a business and we lived, in a business. The pub in those days would close at 3:30 p.m. and then it would reopen again at 6. So we had to have dinner at 5 if we wanted to have dinner as a family around a table in peace and quiet, right? So we lived upstairs in a pretty small setup. And for half of my childhood, me and my sister shared a room and we had a small front room with a table in it. So mum would cook food downstairs and bring it up. But then at 6 o'clock again, all the curtains would be open and the front door would be open and the fire would be lit and we'd be back open for service again. And by the way, it was a busy restaurant. We could do 80 covers in the restaurant, 180 in the bar, and we'd smash those numbers 3 days a week, and then it would kind of tick over nicely, sort of 3 or 4 days a week. So it was kind of only quiet for 2 hours. So 5 o'clock we had family dinner. It would always be home cooked. I never ever, my wife references her childhood. I'm like, what was that? I don't understand that. Pop-Tarts and bits and pieces we did this. Why would we have Pop-Tarts? We've got a walk-in fridge of everything. We would have classic dishes, lasagnas, cannellonis, cottage pies, shepherd's pies, fish pies, spaghetti bolognese, chili con carnes, really classic stuff. But then also just have nicely cooked protein. So it could just be a beautiful double fillet of lemon sole, butter, salt, pepper under the grill, 1 green and 1 potato or something like that. It could be that simple and that delicious, or it could be a grilled chicken breast brushed with something interesting and some kind of carb and veggie. So it was, mum was a good cook and she did a mean roast and all of the things I mentioned above. She killed those recipes. She really did, in a good way, by the way. So a hipster kill and not a kind of not a dictionary kill. But she was a good cook. My dad was a trained chef. He worked in France as a younger man. And I didn't realize that, but they were both they revolutionized pub food. So they were probably one of 5 pubs in the country at that time in 78, 9, 10, the 80s, which had, you could have pubs with good food for sure, but not ones with dynamic restaurants and a brigade of chefs. That was interesting. We didn't have anything frozen. We used a freezer for sort of making compound butters and stuff like that. And I remember we used to have frozen snails that would come in from France that used to freeze. We'd regen them sort of under the grill until they sizzled. But basically everything came in fresh. Scallops, lobsters.
Did you learn a lot from observing how dad and the cooks cooked?
I didn't have a choice. If you were like, oh yeah, my dad used to listen to Elvis and when we were young, it's like, yeah, my dad used to receive boxes of langoustines and lobsters and like turbot and halibut and brew. Yeah, I knew all the fish and all the shellfish by the time I was 12 because it was there every Tuesday and every Thursday, which was fish day. You're seeing it in kind of films and dramas on Netflix and stuff like that. But like the 80s were wild in some respects. Like, of course, there's always some dodgy stuff, but like there was some great music. There was a kind of chicness, like people dressed up. It's like sometimes you go out. I mean, I went out last night to like a semi-fancy restaurant. I mean, everyone kind of looked like shit, really. No one looked fancy.
Well, they're wearing sweatpants and sweatshirts and shit. Yeah.
It's like you're gonna get dressed up, guys. You know, it's like super. I mean, I'm sure they were comfortable,
right?
But like in the 80s, people used to dress up and like look fancy, and like and when they went to work, they looked like they were going to work, and when they were hanging out down the football club, they looked like they were hanging out down the football club, and it was all the brands and Fila, Toscini, Rossini, Gallini, all of the Kappa, Le Cop Sportif, Lacoste, and Le Shark, and all these like brands, the casual era as we called it. In a way, the two restaurants that I lived in mirrored like the best of bar food is that feeling that you'd expect from good bar food. It's sort of slightly more humbler prices and humbler food, but still very delicious.
Are there moments you dreaded, like at the restaurant? Did your dad give you tasks that you were like?
Dad gave me tasks every minute of every day. Dad had an aversion to anyone not contributing to the show, but it was also all that I knew, and it was a family business. And even though I didn't really understand the emotion of pride, I was very proud of my parents creating a beautiful restaurant. It was quite a famous local place out of nothing. It was, when they bought it, it was like, stunk of piss and it was just like run down and shit. And it was an old like 16th century pub that like totally needed love. So it needed the energy of like a young couple. Dad was powered by his two little kids that he wanted to provide for. So it was a nice life. And contrary to the bar food, we had the restaurant food, which was fancy. And we had all these local sort of 50, 60-year-old women that would kind of be your servers. And they just had that amazing charm that only a 50, 60-year-old woman can have. Do you know what I mean? You just can't fake that. They'd done it, seen it, smelt it and felt it. And like they'd had a lot of life. So their ability to talk to a table and have a laugh and make you feel comfortable, and probably all of them changed my nappy. Do you know what I mean? They were all my auntie or whatever you want to call it.
That's so cool. That was your first professional kitchen you saw, obviously. But you got a culinary education at Westminster Catering College?
Yeah, I did.
How did you learn about that? And why did you go there?
It's kind of common practice to go to culinary school. And then ironically, kind of a cliche that thick kids go to culinary school. I don't know if it's the same in the States, but like, it's like, A, it's not true, but B, it was just like, that's what everyone said.
This was the 90s or so?
I was born in 75. So this would have been sort of, the early 90s.
Like when I was in high school, people are like, you should go to culinary school. And I'm like, that's stupid. But then I went to university for 2 years. And then I'm like, wait, I'm going to culinary school. And I left my university and went to culinary school.
Well, I think because of what I said, when we by the age of 15, I was quite an able cook. So probably if you'd have put me to do a stage at most good restaurants, I could have just about pulled it off. By the age of 15, I'd kind of gone through the cycle of the kitchen, which was a traditional French regimental kitchen, like more than several times, more than 20 times. So I was already in a position where like the kids that were coming from college at 20 were getting trained by me at the weekend at 13, 14, 15. So in a way, that's when I had to start designing tactics of teaching through showing. And also, when you got a hairy-assed 20-year-old getting trained by a 13-year-old, that's quite a tense scenario to be in. So you don't want to get your head kicked in. So like you had to kind of like train them in a way that didn't demasculate them. So it's hard to understand, but you have to see it. I was like 2 feet smaller than them, but I had all the trap in the world. I was cocky, cheeky, sassy, and could use a knife like a ninja even at 12. If you think about like how talented BMXers or ballerinas are at 10, 12, like the minute you start talking about like cooking and hot oil and sharp knives, like everyone thinks, oh, no. It's like, no, yeah. Like kids are totally able. Everyone has to learn how to use a blade and respect it at some stage. It might as well be young. In actual fact, it's better if it's young. And certainly if you go to developing countries, kids are honing those skills even younger, to survive and to get by. So I went to culinary school when I was 16 and they accepted me I did essentially a day's stage on an open day. And they're like, yeah, you coming in. So they didn't even ask for my exam results. You just turn up, be counted, put your name down. My dad was there. He was obviously in a suit and was talking like industry history shit to the lecturer. Like the lecturer's sort of like looking at the lecturer like dads look at lecturers and like, yeah, like take him, sort him out.
Did your dad know you needed more of those, like that foundational education?
I think he just thought it was part of 16's quite young. I think he thought it was kind of part of the process. It'll be good on your CV that you're never going to use. From my point of view, I could have easily gone straight into the restaurants and I didn't really want to go to college, but I think I'd struggled and done so badly at school that actually this was the beginning of me being able to stick my finger up at school and say, fuck you. And I went to Westminster College where we were learning pretty hardcore biology and French and science and learning about bacteria and food poisoning and all that sort of stuff and butchery, fishmongery, sugar work, chocolate work, all the different types of meringues and how they work and blah, 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 blah. So probably the truth was that I could do 80, like everyone that was going in was starting from about 10% or zero. And I was probably about 85% from a physical point of view. But it did mean that I could focus on the theory. So for the first time in my life, I was able to sort of do exams and smash it. And when everyone was concentrating on the physical, practical side of cooking, of course I was finessing that and that never stops, by the way. You're always finessing that. But it did mean that I could really concentrate on the stuff that I'd struggled with, which was the reading and the writing and getting it down on paper and passing my exams. And in actual fact, I didn't just do the nationally recognized qualification. We were on a transition year. So I did the old qualification times 3 and I did the new qualification times 3, plus a separate one that was unique to this college. Westminster College was the oldest catering college in the country. So I think at that stage, it was like 350 years old. So yeah, old school. And had, Escoffier had cooked there and had a presence. And obviously London, I was a country boy, right? So I was what we would call a country bumpkin. And so we were like, in my class was every imaginable religion, shade of color of skin. I was learning that I'd grown up in a very white part of Essex. This was an extraordinary time for me to open my mind about people, culture, being a grown-up, being able to go down the pub and how, we can drink at 18 in the UK. And to be fair, most of us had fake ID at 16 anyway. So it's quite common for 16-year-olds to be getting on it down the pub, which obviously in the States, it's like 21 and they're pretty strict about it. Less so in the UK, but 18 is the age. So, but just learning how to not drink too much in a drinking competition. This is stuff you got to learn. I knew that downing 3 pints of beer within an hour is probably not a great idea, but it was exciting.
Did you go from there to work at the Neal Street restaurant?
Yeah, I'd done a kind of few bits of like work experience in the local area back home that were fancy. And I'd continued doing stages at college. But my first job after college was the Neal Street restaurant.
Did that help shape who you are today, that experience at that restaurant?
Because I met Gennaro and I got to work with Antonio Collicchio, who was a legend and very famous at the time, kind of like the Pavarotti of the kitchen. And his right-hand man was Gennaro, who was kind of the one that was really doing it and was a chef. But Antonio wasn't a chef. He was actually a wine exporter, but very charismatic and very cool. So Gennaro was working there and he'd be there at like 2 a.m. and work through till midday. The only job I could take was head pastry chef. So I had to basically blag that job and I'd be there 9 till 3, 6 till 1 in the morning. I'd only see Gennaro in the morning. And after a few months, I really wanted just to sort of learn pasta and bread with him. But Antonio wouldn't let me because like Gennaro was like his secret little weapon. And it's where a lot of the secret recipes were. And I kept asking and he kept saying no. And then as I got close to Gennaro, basically I worked out like I need to sort of become proper friends with Gennaro. So other than just conversing with him and in all those sort of ways, what I did was, because I was the last one out of the kitchen as a pastry chef, that part of London was busy till late and you'd get before theatre and after theatre. So I'd get the last tube home from Leicester Square at 1:30 in the morning and I'd tray up all of Gennaro's trays and I'd get all of his bread mixes ready and I'd turn all his ovens on and I'd break down the kitchen so it was ready.
Was that part of your responsibility or you did that?
No. I did that just to kind of save him. I thought if I can save him an extra hour in bed, the chances are we're going to become friends. We used to take the stale bread from the day before. We used to have this massive machine that would like turn it into the finest breadcrumbs, almost like semolina. And we dust trays with that. And then what I do is like, I try and tell a story through that. So, you do a couple of normal trays and then it would say, good morning, Gennaro. And then it'd be a couple of normal trays. And then I'd just draw a massive cock and say morning, drawn in stale breadcrumbs that were the kind of crispy base of all the loaves of bread he was going to put on there. So yeah, after about a month, Gennaro's just said, don't worry about what Antonio says. You can come and work with me. Now, that was great, but the only way I could work with him is if I came back at 3 a.m. I mean, I don't know how I did it. I used to do 9 till 3, 6 till 1:30, 3:30 till 7, and then 9
Holy
till
shit.
3.
For how
yeah, so
long?
I did 3 shifts a day for about a year.
What'd you do? Sleep, go home and sleep an hour or two
Well,
here and
luckily
there?
I had a scooter, so I could get home in like 15 minutes. And I was like 18, so like I was bouncy. I just put my head down for 2.5 hours, zip back. I was just lived in the kitchen, basically. And then after a year, I discovered the River Cafe cookbook, the blue one. Just visually and graphically, there was nothing really like it on the planet. And it felt like a kind of calling, a mecca. Like the vibe was like really unconventional, and the seriousness of food was so intense, but the kind of vibe was so unusually relaxed.
How did you find that book? Like at a store, or was it like, did someone have it? How did you come across that?
I found it in a store. We had a lot more independent bookshops, and there was one that's still there actually in Portobello Road called Books for Cooks, and it's still there now. Cute store. You just kind of have a little sniff about. You could go there and have some random thing, fermenting or the mushroom pickle book. Like no one's going to write that book. Yes, they have. It's whatever mad ass cookbook you can dream of. Like it's been written before, and you go and find it in Books for Cooks, and then do your research, and then try and resuscitate it into a modern context. But I found the River Cafe book, and I just said to Gennaro, I've got to go here, and he's like, go on, go. He knew of Rose and Ruth because Rose used to work with Antonio, but interestingly, they'd fallen out and they didn't get on. And I'd cooked a couple of their desserts that I put on my menu at the Neal Street. And Antonio loved them until I told him it was from the River Cafe book. And he was like, he was super pissed off. But I phoned up the River Cafe, spoke to Rose on the phone. She said, come in, have an interview. I did my interview. I wore a suit, a really cheap shit suit. You definitely don't do that at the River Cafe because they're all kind of like sage leaves, linen and Birkenstocks. They're very chez panisse.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, in fact, I was reading a lot of Alice Waters at the time as well and falling in love with her writing. Patricia Wells, Marcella Hassan, Stephanie Alexander, all women actually, just kind of blown. And because I'm dyslexic, you have to read slowly and several times. So the downside is it's inefficient and slow, but the upside is like when you get in, you're deep. Like you're like detailed deep. So I got the job at the River Cafe and then just had 3.5 of the most incredible years working there. And I loved it and accelerated through the kitchen quite quickly and became part of their fabric quite quickly. And of course, that's where the Naked Chef was discovered.
Hey everyone, there's more of our conversation with Jamie Oliver in just a couple minutes. We're excited to share that our friends at Fords Gin are back this season, and they're once again mixing up something special. Throughout the season, they're creating custom cocktails inspired by the guest you're hearing from right now. Today, we're going to hear from Kayla Mata, Trade Advocacy Manager for Fords Gin. Kayla created a drink inspired by Jamie Oliver's new book, Eat Yourself Healthy. Kayla, I'm very excited to see what you came up with for us because being it's the top of the new year and, we're all looking to be a little more mindful of what we eat and drink, I'm kind of curious to see what you created based on this book.
Hey, Cappy. Yeah, thanks. So I decided to come up with a Tom Collins style drink. I feel like Jamie did such a great job at emphasizing the joy of nourishment in Eat Yourself Healthy. With all of these bright, colorful fruits and veggies, I just found it super energizing. And so with that energy, I decided to create something a little bubbly, hence the Miso Collins. So the Miso Collins starts with 1.5 parts of Fords Gin, 1/2 part of fino sherry, 1/2 part of fresh squeezed lemon juice, 1/4 part of miso honey. We'll get back to that in just a moment. And then we're going to go ahead and put all of those ingredients into your shaker tin. Lightly shake, strain over a Collins glass with fresh ice, and top off with soda water. Now your garnish is going to be a lemon twist, and there you go. There is the Miso Collins. But to get back to that miso honey, on how to make that super yummy, delicious syrup, it's going to be 1 cup of honey, 1 cup of brewed dandelion tea. Now you're going to want this still a little bit warm. 2 tablespoons of miso, of white miso specifically. We're going to want to go ahead and stir that all up until everything's pretty much dissolved and strained out. This will hold up into the fridge for about 2 weeks. so you're able to enjoy more cocktails later on. I feel like the Miso Collins goes really well with a lot of fish dishes, a lot of bright veggie dishes, citrus forward. Jamie has such an array of globally inspired dishes. I'm sure you can find something to enjoy this cocktail with.
Or on its own. This cocktail sounds amazing. I mean, if it weren't for anything, like I'll take this syrup and find many uses for it.
It's super delicious.
This is awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Appreciate you, Joe Brook, and Anna Maines for being part of this fun little series this season. If you like this one, you'll find more fun cocktails throughout the Beyond the Plate season. The Ford's team also contributed in episodes with Chef Enrique Olvera, Asma Khan, Leah Cohen, and Jake Cohen. To get the recipe for this cocktail, check out the episode notes in your podcast player. To learn more about Ford's Gin, go to fordsgin.com and follow them on social media at Ford's Gin. Please drink responsibly. Ford's London Dry Gin, 45% ABV, Brown-Forman, Louisville, Kentucky. Ford's Gin is a registered trademark. Ford's Gin, the cocktail gin. Okay, so do I have this right? You actually had a day off. You were covering a shift on the line. There's a BBC crew filming there, and the cameras come on, and you are just being yourself, educating, telling people what you're doing in the moment. And the next thing you know, you're getting calls to make a food TV show.
Yeah, I mean, that's the compounded version. I mean, I don't think I was considering educating anyone.
But you were kind of doing that. I mean, you were teaching, like you said, at the pub, you were 13 years old, teaching 20-year-old cooks how to do shit. Like, you were a teenager. You worked your ass off.
It came naturally to me, but they were just a crew in my way, getting on my nerves.
But they were probably saying, tell us what you're doing, and what is that ingredient?
You
what
know
is that
how
ingredient?
annoying TV people are. And then, but also it was a Saturday night. We were fully booked, and I was covering someone, so I was two hours behind on my mise en place. So I would normally make sure that my section is like got plan A's, B's, and C's, and you do good mise en place so that you can handle any ebb and flow of service when you're getting your ass kicked. I got this fucking crew asking me all these questions, but
yeah, you're trying to get risotto out the door, and they're like, "What is that?" You're saying?
I was kind of like excited a bit and sort of just focused really, and then didn't think anything of it because they were cutting it and editing it for months, and I think it went out about 4 months later. And then I didn't know I was in it. I was working the night it was on TV. And then the next day they're like, oh, you were in it? Oh my God, yeah, you did this bit and you did that bit and you did that bit. And I'm like, really? And then the phone calls started. And the first phone call was from the BBC. And then I realized about sort of 4 minutes in that it was actually the general manager of the River Cafe pretending and taking the piss.
Shit.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, fuck you, man. Like just normal banter between colleagues, kiss my ass and all that, general rudeness between colleagues that love each other. And that was that. But then in service, that was about 11 o'clock. It was just for a bit of a laugh. And then like in service about 12:30 and about 1:30, I had 2 phone calls from the real people. One of them was a researcher for Optimum TV, for Pat Llewellyn, who found and produced The Fat Ladies, obviously The Naked Chef, and then afterwards it would be Hell's Kitchen and Ramsay.
Did you think they were fucking with you again?
Yeah. So when they phoned up, this guy, the real guy, phoned up and said, oh, we're just phoning you to talk about you possibly meeting us and filming. I said, and I just went into the abuse again because I thought it was Giles playing again. I'm like, dude, we're in the middle of service, kiss my ass. And I told him to do something with a broom to himself that is illegal in most countries around the world. And I could tell I kind of knocked his confidence. And then he said the words pilot, film a pilot. And what was the other word? You're going to want to film, we want to do a filming of a pilot and get it commissioned. And then I realized I'd made a massive mistake and I had to apologize profusely. And
oh my God.
And then there was another call that day as well. And then we kind of hooked up, we met up, we did like a little version of what you would call a sizzle, which was pretty crap, very rough, very ready. Me in my little 1-bedroom flat in Hammersmith with my girlfriend, Jules. And it sat at Channel 4 for 6 months and they passed on it in the end. And then it turned up on the desk of a guy called Mark Thompson, who I think he might be running the New York Times now. He certainly did. Lovely man. And he was head of BBC Two, which was famous for doing those shows. And he commissioned me in a week. I'd like to think I'm quite good friends with him now. And I go, why? And I think what happened, he just said, oh, because you were like naturally this and that, and we wanted to take a chance and stuff like that. But I think that is true. I also think there might have been like weird things happen in broadcasters when there's a gap in the schedule. And because they trusted Pat Llewellyn, she's a woman that delivers on her 6 shows on time, on budget. Like the equation I think it was a lot of luck. I mean, I'm very touched that they thought I was so charismatic from my terrible pilot. But I think, look, in some respects, the BBC, the way it's structured, it's always supposed to be able to make programming that commercial TV can't make. It has to be diverse and inclusive. It has to take risks on new talent, and it has to be this, that. That's the kind of theory, right? So anyway, ended up with my own series, and it was, and I just written a piece of paper just saying, look, if you want me to do this TV show, I want to strip down restaurant food to its bare essentials and just make food really simple. And then from the word stripping and bare, that's where the Naked Chef came from. And the rest is history.
Incredible. Okay, so fame came pretty quick for you. I'm curious that relationship with fame and also like a follow-up there. But when did you realize you needed to use your voice for more than cooking?
The Naked Chef exploded, not just around the UK, around the world. I didn't even understand the concept of distribution and different countries buying your programs. The book went straight to number one. It actually went to number one before the show came out. So there was clearly a hunger for a younger voice. And my first book was a pretty decent book. It was beautiful. And if you look through it now, it still stands up. It still looks like a kind of fairly modern and contemporary book. And then I started kind of just looking at doing stuff that was a bit different. I set up my own restaurant, which was a charity that was powered by kids that were kind of, let's say, lost. Some unemployed, some out of education, some fresh from prison, some homeless. And that was without doubt the best thing that I've ever done, and sort of started to, because I was never particularly campaigny or political, or, I was never like advocating anything other than talking crap and having fun and loving food. I wasn't that kid, but what I was open-minded and always open to learning. I knew I could train these kids from troubled backgrounds. And the proof of the pudding is now, like, of the 480 that we graduated, like, there's a handful that have run Michelin star restaurants, had their own Michelin stars. When I took my wife to Amsterdam for our 25th wedding anniversary last year, I went to my favorite restaurant, which was one of my students' restaurants. You've got those full circle moments, but those young people did teach me a lot of powerful lessons about second and third and fourth chances, about the concept of transformation. And that kind of skewed me towards other documentaries and how to make documentaries and how to run a campaign and how to gather the thoughts and feelings of the public and turn it into votes and force government to change legislation and policies. And so weirdly, I got really good at it quite quick. And again, I don't know how, but yeah, that's sort of, They taught me and grew me into the person that I am today, really.
That's so good. So let's talk about the new book, Eat Yourself Healthy. I believe you've always walked the walk, whether it's cooking, going into schools to shine a light on school meals, and entrenching yourself on a specific cuisine. Correct me if I'm wrong, you travel to blue zones to where people live the longest. Why this book now?
I think, look, it's the public in the UK and the US are pretty sick pretty often. That's more normal than abnormal. And it's nothing that we should be proud of, really. You could say, is it down to ignorance, laziness, greed, all of these things. But the truth is the food that we eat has changed a lot in 45 years. And the composition of those foods, if you like, has changed. And the environment that we live in has changed a lot. We've been beating the crap out of our bodies and thrashing our kidneys and livers and all those things. So I think if you look at that from a sort of health data point of view, trying to write a book that can really hold gently the hands of people through breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, drinks, desserts, nibbles, snacks, feels an appropriate thing to do. And having trained in nutrition, but also got an amazing nutrition team and got my little octopus tentacles around most of the cleverest minds in the weird nuances of food, farming and biology and health and science. Like, we all talk all the time, because it's tough out there for them. Even if they've got fascinating news, that doesn't mean they can get it out to people. So we all help each other. So I just thought I'd try and bottle that into a book, and through the language of delicious, colourful recipes. If you flick through the book now, it's beautiful, it's colourful, none of it's luck. There's the right amount of meat proteins, fish proteins, bean proteins, the right amount of veggie, vegan and regular recipe. Everyone's been taken care of, right? There's recipes that I know you're going to love that hit home. And then there's recipes that you might like. And then there's recipes that you've never even dreamt of eating, but just maybe you could try something new. So it's all like a slightly neurodiverse equation of structure and format, but there's 50 hacks in there. There's a 2-week Kickstarter, which is like to anyone that feels not great and feels like they could be better, have more energy and be more alert and just be happier. I would genuinely endorse the 2-week Kickstarter. If you can do that, amazing things happen in 2 weeks if you stick to it and if you don't lie to yourself. That 2-week Kickstarter is using delicious food to make you cook, breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week for 2 weeks, so that your body is being flushed with all the things that it needs, not by luck, but by design. And I really, really, really believe in it. And I also think if you can do it, then do 4 weeks. It's super powerful. Like if you need to lose weight, then there's enough deficit in the 3 that you'll throw off weight and water and inflammation and just like the dynamics and diversity of nutrients in that 2-week plan is mega. And so your body gets a holiday, right? The truth is, if you don't feel your best, like you deserve this. So it's not just the kind of food and the flavor and the nutrition that you're consuming, but just in the 2-week plan, there's a diversity of technique and cooking methods as well. So it really could help you reconnect your relationship with yourself and your body and food and the language of just like, because cooking's not rocket science. It's just doing stuff to make a meal. And like you only eat shit if you buy it. So it's just everyone's busy, everyone's distracted. Because we know that, and because marketing and advertising is designed around what we know, it's not luck, we know, down to the postcode, of where you live, right? So if you want to have control or more control in your life, you have got to learn to cook. It doesn't mean you have to have a career in the kitchen. It just means that you need to be able to shop and you need to be able to cook some basic stuff. And if you start throwing in a family into the equation, then oh my God. So I'm not saying this in a lecherous way. I'm just saying the point of this book is that I have done all of the hard work for you. I've done all so you don't have to do the 2-week Kickstarter plan. Just go in there, flick through it. I'll do this, I'll do that. Oh, that turned out cool. Oh, cool. I'll do a few more. Maybe I will do the 2-week kick. It might take 3 weeks. It might take 3 years for you to go, I feel like shit and I don't know why. And there's going to be loads of people in your algorithm telling you why. And it probably, when you sort of watch a 3-minute bloody annoying video, they're trying to sell you some supplements or something to stick up your ass or in your arm or something like that. And it's just like, okay, cool. And yeah, I'm trying to sell you a book. So I guess I'm as guilty. But I just think it's the book's full of kind of thoughtfulness and like wholesomeness. And there's vibes of sleep in there as well, hydration, and we just want you to feel better. And by the way, like food's much more than this. Food can be sassy, it can be romantic, it can be leery, it can be big and bold and audacious, it can be indulgent. And we know all the things that are indulgent that we love. You don't need educating in that, but it also can nourish you and heal you. And people in that field hate you saying things like heal. But I'm telling you, like the national, like 95% of Americans don't eat enough fiber. If you do your research, it's like literally a few tins of beans difference. If you look at the difference that would make to America as a society, and if you look at like how not having enough fiber affects, like you're making you prone to heart attacks, strokes, cardiovascular disease, but also terrible microbiome in your stomach, and then terrible mental health and inflammation, and like it's like from a tin of beans. It's like, yeah, it's like, honestly, it's mad. There's a lot to be gained, and a lot of the things or the majority of the stuff I'm asking you to buy are the cheapest things in the supermarket, right? There's veggies, pulses, spices. These are all very affordable. And yeah, we've got to be clever around the proteins, and food is not cheap. I get that. But 8 times out of 10, if you cook something, you're going to probably make it. If you cook something for 4, you're probably going to be cheaper than getting a takeout for 4.
All right, I'm going to do a speed round, close it out. Speed round number 1. What did you have for dinner last night?
Oh, last night I had some versions of sashimi and sushi, followed to a different continent, a beautiful pumpkin tortellini, and then followed by a kind of almatoni chicken from an Amish community with various sauces. It was quite a wild, disparate menu. I credit you that.
Was this a food crawl or one place?
It was a restaurant, but it was a nice night.
Nice. Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
The smell in the kitchen that I love. And there's so many, and they all mean so many different things, from burnt caramel to beautiful strawberries and rhubarb kind of compotting down as a dessert or a jam or something. But things like kaffir lime leaves in laxers, and it's all beautiful smells.
How about a smell in the kitchen you hate?
Oh, the smell in the kitchen that I hate. Shouldn't be any, really. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. If you're fermenting stuff and you're letting that jar breathe and burp, that's pretty ropey. I'm not going to lie. And fish sauce, which is integral to Thai cooking. And actually, there's fish sauce in Mediterranean cooking as well. That stuff is ropey, but used with respect is very good in the food.
How about what pisses you off in the kitchen?
What pisses me off in the kitchen? I think just general violence and misogyny and anger.
What makes you happy in the kitchen?
Being with an amazing team. I mean, I think like if you've got a good team and if they're happy, kitchens, ironically, are very, very happy places, and they really can be and they really should be. And the camaraderie, the friendship, the banter, the kind of sense of protection that you have from one another is a really, really beautiful thing.
How about a book or a resource you'd suggest to young cooks?
It's a hard one because the genius of books is they're so nuanced. It's going to be something like the Book of Ingredients, or like, I think it's like the Thesaurus of Flavor, just like something that is a place to go where you can see what flavors are best friends with each other and maybe how you can link that within one of your specials that you're designing in your brain. There are fundamental books that are just classic, like the River Cafe book, which I think sets a scene, which is beautiful. And then, you could find something beautiful in Italian from Patricia Wells and like I say, the Stephanie Alexander, Marcella Hussan, Alice Waters. These are good fundamental books. Fundamental in the sense of I think what's needed in the sort of thoughtfulness of recipes is the feminine, really. That's just my opinion. But I think as a man, I can, I know how the ego and structure and control and format and kind of operations can like overtake the sort of much more interesting, well, they're important too, by the way, and not to be frowned upon. But I think Rose Gray, Ruth Rogers, all of those, if you look at the recipes they write, they're very thoughtful, seasonal and tuned into the day. And I think you've got to get into that. I mean, it's probably we all were many like 100 years ago, but I think since the modern times, like you could order like 40 racks of lamb every day, and you don't realize how many sheep you've just taken apart of. Like so, like the idea of buying a whole lamb or a half lamb and being forced in a beautiful way to use every part, every cut, and break it down and fast cook and slow roast. And so I think from an American side, like I think the Chris Bianco cookbooks are amazing. I think anything from Mark Vetri is really, really golden, really, really interesting. They're good, soulful lads. But I've kind of diverted your question, so I apologize.
No, man.
I didn't give you one book.
You're good.
So many.
That's good. I hope someone listening looks up all those books and knows how important that they are and can be for what they're up to. So we have an audio newsletter called Heard, where I share a few things on my plate at the moment: a restaurant, a product or ingredient, a recipe, something social impact related. Can you give me one thing on your plate that I can feature in a forthcoming episode of Heard?
Yeah, one of the beautiful books that I've got on my plate at the moment is a book called The Pasta Book by Mark Vetri. And it's really beautiful. And I think he's a super legit, super talented chef. And he's sort of hand-holding you through like awesome pasta dough and variations and fillings and trying to get your head around just the elegance of sauces with attitude and textures. And I think it's always, I would consider myself a good pasta chef, but I would say that he is an unusually excellent pasta chef. Like he's on a sort of league of his own. And also I think, you're always learning, right? I don't actually feel that I've mastered anything. Like I'm good at many things, but I'm master of probably none. And some people say, oh, I've got too many cookbooks. It's actually a really normal and quite a beautiful thing because it's so diverse, isn't it? Some of the best books on the planet that can take you to another place or make you think differently are very focused and nuanced that most normal people wouldn't be into it. Some of my favorites are like just odd little random books about random things.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. I want to wrap it. Can you give us the overall Jamie Oliver philosophy on social impact or giving back?
Yeah, I think that my philosophy in any of the social campaigning that I do, it's not particularly rocket science. I mean, I think it's identifying something that feels wrong around child health and public health, but we're very focused on child health and really learning as much as you can about it. So it could be, if you're a kid from the projects on free school lunches and you have provision 180 days of the American school year, but in the holidays you've got nothing and mum and dad have got nothing and you're like a street child in those holidays and we can measure those kids getting unhealthy in those holidays and their parents being in high stress because little Johnny hasn't got provision. That what we call holiday hunger, that's been a campaign of ours for years that we're trying to, we've worked very hard to make sure those families in the UK have provision, right? Because that's a pretty bad situation, right? In a developed, successful country like Britain, like for, 1.2 million kids to be in that place is not great. So working on things like that, but really you identify something that's wrong. It could be that school lunches are rubbish. It could be that they're being advertised to. It could be that they're being tracked and followed and hunted on gaming and the places where they hang out socially on their iPads and phones, and being manipulated by most likely junk food or energy drinks. So that's the kind of stuff that I do. We learn a lot about it and we just follow our moral compass. And if everything lines up, then we try and tell those stories, normally through documentaries or programs. And then we try and get a reaction from the audience, wherever they might be, and get them to vote. We set up campaigns and it's kind of analog in a way, even though it's very digital. But to make change, if you're a parent or a person that's passionate about something, the first emotion you're going to feel is very lonely. It's very lonely being someone with something that's wrong and they're unhappy about to make change. You'll feel like you can't make that change. But if you get 5 people together and then 10 people together and you can create a united front, then the next step is to try and get to 100,000 people. And but by the time you get to 100,000 people, pretty much you can do whatever you like. And a lot of most of the campaigns that we've done, even in the non-digital age, we would get 1 million. FYI, governments, and I'm sure you've all been on a masterclass on governments in the last 4 years in your country, like most politicians, certainly in the UK, they say this. Everyone from different parties say this. I don't know if they're taught this at politician college or whatever, but they essentially say, make us and we will. And if you think about that, really? So you actually want us to go and do all the hard work. You have all the millions and billions of pounds worth of resource. You have all the permission to open doors in every university and every clever place in the world. And you want us laymen to go out and gather enough data, as well as go and work and hold the family together and make you and you will. So it's like, that's always amazed me, but they've said it multiple times across multiple parties. And that, whether they say the same words, they imply it in other countries that I've worked in as well. So yeah, I think people struggle with the concept of making change. It can be done.
Love it. Thank you for everything you have done and continue to do and will do into the future. I appreciate you and your time. And where can people find you?
Where can you find me? Well, if you've got Freeview channels on your TV, there's a fine place called the Jamie Oliver channel. And it's on Samsung TVs. It's on like Freeview or free to view channels. JamieOliver.com, thousands of free recipes that you can indulge in. You can come and find me on Instagram, which I love, and Facebook for different audiences, even TikTok that I'm trying to get my head around, even though it's like way late. But yeah, I mean, I think it's that's where you can find me if you're interested. I think I'll tell you what's been really nice actually. I did a thing for Netflix last year called Chef's Table Legends, and actually I'm really proud of that. I was like the only Brit on it. And obviously it's very hard for me to tell my story because that would be I had to have someone else come and tell that story. So that was quite nice to sort of, I guess, finally do a bit of a retrospective and look back over 25 years. So if you've never seen my work or much of my work, then that's probably a good place to start, right?
For sure. Dude, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your time here.
Thank you.
I'm going to be out your way actually in April.
Yeah, so. We'll reach out if you get to London town. Come and see us.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Lots of love. Look after yourself.
Thank you.
See you, dude. All the best.
Find all social media links for myself, Beyond the Plate, and our guests in the episode notes and on beyondtheplatepodcast.com. As always, a big thanks to the whole Beyond the Plate team. And if you have a moment, we'd be grateful for your support by rating, reviewing, and even hitting that subscribe button to the podcast. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.